What's up? I'm Coach Dan Blewett. In today's video, we're going to talk about some curveball myths. We're going to talk about the grip, the release, the spin, some knuckle curve stuff that I felt like I settled pretty well in my previous video on the knuckle curve, but I want to clarify a couple of comments and show some examples here. So first, I've got a couple different videos loaded. So if you can't tell, I've got a couple pictures pretty heavily zoomed in and slowed down. So let's start here. So first thing to note, and I think we need to define this term because this is what gets confusing, is one of the common things that's mentioned when throwing a curveball is getting on top of it. So what does that term mean, right? Because I would tell pitchers to get on top of it. I told myself to get on top of my curveball. It's a common term. I think what a lot of people think it means is that your wrist is sort of bent like this at release, that you're physically above the horizontal plane of the earth, right? Like you're like this. Now, in reality, if you look here on screen, what you'll see is that this pitcher, he is essentially on top of it, I would say a little bit. He's probably a little more to the side. I think it's up for debate. His middle finger and index finger are wrapping around to an extent, but I think there's a couple of interesting things here to note. Number one, his arm is like dead straight. So all the way through the wrist, it's this. It's not this bent thing. So even though I tell pitchers, and I will continue to tell them this, to think about getting their middle knuckle, their pinky finger towards the front of the ball, because it's a good mental cue to try to get them to focus on spinning it better instead of flying out. And a lot of players, they throw the little league curve where they spin it sideways, and that's no good. So I think mentally thinking, hey, get to the front of the ball, get to the top of the ball is a positive thing. I don't care if it's not exactly what happens in real life. I care if that produces the outcome that we want, essentially. So, but here you can tell, plain as day, there is no bend in the wrist when you throw the ball. So that's a myth we can debunk right now. And you'll see this with two other pitchers. They both are straight wrist, pretty much all the way straight through release. So that leaves us with what can actually help us get to the top of the ball. The only thing left, if it's not bending the wrist to get above it, is curling the fingers. So then if I have my karate chopped arm right here, this is as far as I can get to the ball, or I can get to the top of the ball. So essentially what you see with this guy here is that, I don't know, is that to the top of the ball? If you look at his arm here, if we follow the plane of his arm, so he's not obviously throwing at a 12-6 arm angle. So if we follow the plane of his arm, is he on top of it? I think it's up for debate. I'm not going to say either if that's exactly what we've always meant by saying get on top of the curveball, your fingers need to be on top of the curveball. I don't know if that's the exact thing that we all meant and my coaches meant and other players meant when they said get on top of the curveball. I don't know, because most of the finger is on the side of the ball, as you can tell, and as it releases, I'll play this here. It's not really clear how much to the front his fingers actually are. Really, it seems like the fingers just kind of, they right the ball a little bit as he comes through, but it's mostly the wrist and the hands and the fingers are mostly to the side with the fingers snaking in front as far as they can. So let's go to another example. This one's from the front. And this is Adam Wainwright. This is another one from the rear. The last one's from the front. So Adam Wainwright here, you'll see the same thing. As he comes through, you'll see his middle finger is right here. And this was not slow motion footage, so it's about as good as it can get. So you can see the C shape of his fingers. You can see, again, his arm is dead straight. He sticks his finger up, his pointer finger, his index finger. He's always known for that. So you can see his index fingers coming off the ball. So now it's pretty much just the middle finger and thumb are still in contact. And you can already see the ball starting to slip out and get that glassy white 12-6 spin. So again, I think the takeaways here that are interesting are, you see this like, it's almost like a karate chop, right? His arm is much more straight than I think we would realize. And again, I know all of us, even at slow speed, you can kind of get inside the ball a little more like this. And, mentally you can really think about, I'm going to get my fingers to the top. And of course, as your arm's coming through, your fingers are more to the top of the ball. And then as your arm rights itself and gets straight, they kind of get into their position like you can see here. So, but again, I don't know if this is what everyone has always meant all these years about getting on top of the ball. Because if you look at, compared to the ground, he's certainly not on top of the ball, right? We know that. We can tell that right now. If we draw a horizontal line to the earth, there's a lot of white on the top and there's not a lot of fingertip on top. So he's definitely not doing this, right? We can, again, move past that there. The other thing you can tell here is that his fingers are oriented sideways. So we'll get back to this in a second with the knuckle curve, but the idea that pitchers hold their fingers here, and I had a teammate tell me this, and he was dumb. He was telling me that he was doing this at release to spin the ball. Well, your fingers are sideways, sir, and the ball is going to go forward, sir. So how are those two things going to make sense? They just don't. And again, this is the other thing that's really interesting about pitching and throwing in general is it's the fastest human movement. You see how fast his arm is going through here? It's a blur. And you're going to tell me you're going to perfectly time up a little to make the ball go faster or to spin it better? It's not reality. It just isn't. A lot of players will say they do a certain thing when really they just think they do that. And this happens with sprinters. It happens with all sorts of people. Slow motion has debunked a lot of what people think that they've done their whole careers. It's funny and interesting and sometimes shocking and sad. So here's a front view. And let's see how the arm comes through here. So again, you can see the middle finger was kind of on top. I mean, again, it's not on top from the sense of like vertical to the earth. Is it kind of on top relative to his arm angle? Sure. But really, again, his arm is mostly to the side. His fingers are snaking across and around the ball as far as they can. But again, this idea that you get your fingers to the top, that's not really what happens, right? So let's keep going forward here and we'll loop this back. But, you know, the video, I mean, it shows what we're trying to, sorry, it's not playing here. You know, it shows what we're trying to accomplish. And again, it shows that the idea that a knuckle curve could have this flicking component, it's baffling to me that people think that makes sense. I mean, again, your arm is moving thousands of degrees per second at this point, and pretty much all of your joints are rigid, right? Your forearm is rigid, your elbow, or you're at the wrist, you're rigid. Everything essentially is moving as a unit at this point. There's nothing doing any crazy things. There's no extensions. Like everything's like holding on tight at this point because it's so fast. Your joints are stabilizing at that speed. So the idea that your fingers are then going to go and knuckle curve the ball, no. So let's go back here. So as he comes through, and again, this is another interesting thing about high speed is there's no major joint action changes. Where the fingers were are essentially where they are at release. The whole hand and arm is moving more as a unit at this point, again, with stabilized joints. And you can see he comes through, he spins the ball, and really it's just kind of falling out of his hand, and his arm as a unit is spinning it at that point. And there's really doesn't seem to be, and again, you could maybe have a different interpretation than I do, but do you see a major like individual contribution from a finger at this point? Not really. In my view, it's just at this point, everything's going so fast that the whole arm is what's essentially spinning the ball, and the fingers are along for the ride, and the ball is along for the ride after that. So as you go through, you can see there he's imparting the spin, then his forearm turns over, right? It pronates naturally, which that happens on every throw, curveball, slider, fastball, whatever, and then it goes through. So again, if we were to stop it at release, you'd see that his fingertips are facing sideways to where the ball is going to travel. The ball is coming out this way, and the fingers are facing sideways. So again, at this point, if you're to flick, it would be turning the ball this way when the ball is supposed to be going this way. Hence why that like idea that knuckle curve pitchers are adding spin by doing that, they just don't have an understanding of what they're actually doing at full speed. And this is what my teammate was saying. And we got slow motion video, took the phone right there in the bullpen, and we're like, no, you're definitely not doing what you said you did. I know you believe that, but here's video evidence that pretty much shows it. So again, your fingers are sideways, the ball's coming out forward. That's where the spin direction comes from. The knuckles, they're not going to make a difference. So anyway, I hope this video helped. Obviously, curveballs and high-speed stuff, it's becoming more prevalent than ever. You can see this on, MLB Game of the Week. They slow down some pitchers, and it's awesome. You can share that footage. But at the same time, there's still a lot of myths out there about how kids throw, different breaking balls, what you should be focusing on. And again, it's not always that you should be teaching the exact thing. Like, I don't tell kids to get on the side of the ball and wrap your fingers around it, because that's a stupid thing to say to someone who's trying to learn something. I do tell them to try to get their fingers to the front of the ball, because it helps produce the result that I want. So this video, the point of this was not to convince you to teach people exactly what's happening, because I don't do that. I don't find that to be effective. I find it to be effective to say, think about getting your fingernail forward and your middle finger pointed towards your catcher. Even though that's not what's actually going to happen, it does still have the effect of helping them get their hand in the proper position to spin the ball correctly. So it's not like this has to be some weird takeaway where it's like, oh, now I need to teach things different. You don't have to necessarily. Results, if you're a coach teaching players to throw curveballs, results are what matters. So you're going to learn different cues and different ways of teaching it to get the result that you want, the spin that you want. As far as understanding what actually happens, that can have other important implications. And I think it's just fun and interesting just to see what's happening. Like, I was going back and back with Barton Smith, who's a aerodynamic engineer in Utah, and we were talking about what cutters do. And it was like still very unclear like how cutters worked. And he helped me understand a little bit more the gyro component and some of those components to it. It's the aerodynamics. We're still learning stuff about the aerodynamics of pitching. So anyway, thanks for listening. I'm Coach Dan Blewett. Be sure to subscribe to the channel below. Share this video if you found it interesting. And check out my books, my courses, all that stuff that's also in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.